regarding the 2026 April 7th referendum. So some key things that I want to start with are just the ability to take a look at some general information regarding our district. We are a K-8 district, K-4 through 8th grade. We have three buildings. Two of them are used for educational purposes, so that would be Parkway and Glen Hills. We do not use Good Hope for our educational purposes, but we do have that as a building that we use to lease out to a daycare and a couple of other organizations. Our enrollment, we serve about 973 students. This is 10 more students over the prior year. And our percent of open enrollment out is 10%, which is 2% less than the prior year. So we are seeing an increase in our resident enrollments. Demographics of students we serve, 40.3% white, 33.8% Black or African American, two or more races, 11.3%, Hispanic and Latino, 10.8%, and Asian, 3.8%. We currently have 18% of our students with disabilities in our district, and 38.4% are economically disadvantaged. 2.3% of our learners are English language learners. We employ a total of 204 staff in our schools. That includes everyone from our educational professional staff as well as our paraprofessionals, our custodians, our school administrative assistants. Per pupil spending for the Glendale-River Hills School District is $22,104. I also have comparables for Mapledale Indian Hill at 24,712 and Fox Point Bayside at 25,135, and then also Nicolet, which is at 28,903. So that just gives you kind of an idea on the local spending that's taking place per student across our districts, and we all feed into Nicolet's programming. Our revenue limit in 25-26 was $18,311,323. Class sizes that we seek to hold are sort of our minimum and maximum. For K4 is 16 to 22. K5 through third grade, it's 18 to 24. Fourth grade, it's through eighth grade, it's 22 to 28. Our district report card results, last year as a district, we were at 70.8, which meets expectations. And then Parkway is at 67.8, meets expectations. And Glen Hills was at 71.2, which exceeded expectations. Okay, and I'm going to move this. So some critical pieces that have been put into place since the time that I've started working as superintendent in the district, we moved to have the strategic plan and key performance indicators. So our strategic plan, our vision is a community that pursues equity where each person belongs and thrives. And we work on empowering growth, connection, and success for all members of our learning community. We do this through four key areas, which are whole child growth and success, exceptional staff, exceptional leadership, empowered community, and equitable stewardship. In each of those areas, the board, along with the school administration, has worked to develop key performance indicators to measure our outcomes and results as a district through some internal measures, and those can be found on our district website. So some basic information about our spring 2026 replacement operational fund. Since 1994, school funding has relied on state aid plus local property taxes in order to fund their public schools. Both of those two things are controlled by state-imposed revenue limits, and we know that revenue limits have not kept pace with inflation. Our legislature has framed this as local control for voters to fund their own public schools. And by 2025, we know that 85% of districts have used operational referendums to sustain funding for their operations across the state of Wisconsin. So the maximum revenue per member is, we have, you can see here from 2013 on, you can start to view how the changes have been made in terms of inflation is the dark line where my arrow is pointing. And below that is where we've seen increases in state funding. Right now, the cumulative difference that is being projected is $2,574 per student. And what that equates to when we take a look at our operational referendum is a big portion of what the need is for our district in order to close some of our funding gaps. So the spring replacement operational referendum will be asking, shall the Glendale-River Hills School District be authorized to exceed the revenue limit by $5 million per year for 4 years, beginning with the 26-27 school year and ending with the 2029-30 school year. And this would be used for non-recurring purposes consisting of operational expenses to maintain district programs. So our spring 2026 replacement operational referendum is adjusting and meeting our inflationary shortfalls. So in that funding slide that I had showed previously, if the funding matched inflations, we would have $2,574 more per student per year. We serve approximately 950 students. That's over 2.4 million per year in lost revenue capacity. And that represents structural limits in the funding system, not local spending decisions. In addition to that, we are continuing to have increased pressures with special education funding. So we serve approximately 18% of our students have IEPs, which is slightly over 170 students in our district. And when Wisconsin reimburses no more than 35% of special education costs, we must fund the remaining percent, 65% of that locally. In this past school year, that has meant $2.5 million has been transferred from our general operating funds to support our special education costs, which are mandated by federal and state requirements. So there's been some talk in the news about how the special ed education aid reimbursement rates were going to increase this past school year in the biennium budget. And there's a couple things that I think are important to understand. You can see that last year we were at 30.64, and then the estimated amount for this year was supposed to be 42%, and then moving up to 45% reimbursement in 26-27. The only issue with the way that this went through the legislature is it went through as being some certain, which means that a finite allocation of funds and a specific dollar amount were provided in the biennium budget. And when it's gone, it's gone. So the estimates are not often accurate due to those costs, inflation, and increasing needs and other pressures. So that promised 42% for this year is now more accurately coming in at 35 to 38%. We budgeted for that in a very conservative way, but even so, that remains a financial hit to our district. Some sufficient was what we were seeking from the biennium budget, and that would really be that 42% would actually be 42%, regardless of the final dollar amount. So what we see in the Glendale-River Hills School District is that we have an inflationary gap that is approximately $2.4 million annually, and we have unaided special education costs, which equate to $2.5 million annually. And what that does is provides us with about a $4.9 million annual gap between our revenues and expenditures. This is where the operational referendum is coming into play to come to our voters to ask if you'd continue to support that. We do know that these figures don't also incorporate some of the inflationary spending or increased special education costs that we could face as a part of this. So budget forecasting base with no referendum, you can see that as we take a look at the budget forecasting, this would be without a referendum. So we are in our current year right now, and that base forecast where you see that 3 million would be us paying down the state trust fund loan that was taken out 2 years ago, and trying to work to offset and defease some of the debt that has been there. You can see that very quickly we are going to be falling into a shortfall of fund balance and deficit of spending. With the $5 million referendum for 4 years, you can see that we can go ahead and work on defeasing that debt and making sure that we maintain a fund balance. But we will also still need to have an eye on where we can find efficiencies in our operational costs and remain to keep costs low by seeking out some of the things that we've been doing in the last couple of years by making sure we're using zero-based budgeting with our departments and school leaders and really working to find efficiencies within our spaces so that we can ensure that we are not spending more than we can work with. The historical mill rate for Glendale-River Hills portion of the tax bill is listed up here. You can see that in 2024, it was 6.13, so $6.13. In 2025, it moved up to $7.58, and I'm sure that is when many of our residents felt a major jump in their tax bills. Part of the reason for that mill rate jump that year was that we had the $4.5 million referendum and the $1.5 million referendum. It's important to note that going into 26, 27, both those referendums will have fallen off at that point, and we will only have that $5 million referendum on the books, bringing the estimated real mill rate to $6.34. If you look at mill rate comparisons, please note it is difficult to make a direct comparison to a K-12 district just because they have different educational needs. We know that K-8 education typically costs more because we have more needs with younger children in terms of supervision and oftentimes curriculum resources. So when you look at our neighboring districts of Fox Point, Bayside, Mapledale, Indian Hill, you can see that we are still, even with the 2026 $5 million referendum, we would still be looking at a lower mill rate than both of our partner districts that also feed into Nicolet. So the property tax impact, you can see that the district-wide mill rate would go from 2024, which was last year, from 758. It dropped to 634 this school year, and it would estimate to come up to $6.75. So there's an estimated impact of a 0.41, so 41-cent increase for every $1,000 from this year to next year, should the referendum pass. And really taking a look at what that means for our residents. An $1,000 home, the actual for this year would be $634 for the Glendale-River Hills portion of that. And in 2026-27, it would be $675. The yearly impact to taxpayers is estimated to be $41 with a monthly impact of $3.41. You can see where we variated that up by different home prices, so you could look at what that might cost you as a taxpayer. A couple things to keep in mind. If the referendum passes, it will be used to help support keeping our class sizes and teacher student ratios to remain stable. It will maintain current levels of reading and math intervention by allowing us to continue to hold interventionists and reading coaches as part of our educational staff. It will allow for the continuation of talent development opportunities. Also at our middle school, we are fortunate to be able to offer tech ed, STEAM, music, band, orchestra, and choir in world language. So we would be able to continue that offering of programming to support our students in prepping for Nicolet. We would also have the opportunity to maintain our levels of mental health supports for our students through counselors, psychologists, and our school social worker. And then also remaining competitive with staff compensation and benefits, and also keeping curriculum materials and instructional technology current, as well as attending to buildings and ground maintenance needs as addressed. If it does fail, we would need to have an immediate annual $5 million reduction, which is about 25% of our district budget. Staff reductions would lead to increased class sizes at Parkway and Glen Hills, reduced academic and mental health supports for our students in both Parkway and Glen Hills, reductions or an elimination of some of our music, tech ed, art, STEAM, world language, and talent development offerings, fewer curriculum resources and technology upgrades, increasing school fees for families, and then also further deferring maintenance in our buildings, which we know leads to higher long-term costs. So you can get more information by visiting our website, but I also would like to take the opportunity to answer any questions that any of you attending tonight might have, so we can help you out with that. So feel free, Brad, if you want to go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Knight. I appreciate you taking the time out to work through the information for us. I wanted to reference back to your slide on the mill rate, and I just wanted to make sure I understood what the information that was sharing for us. So if we go to the following page,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there you go. Obviously, I see how we compare in our district the Nicolay feeder schools. I'm
Yep.
a little confused about what the other columns represent for those other school districts. Are those meant to represent full K-12 mill rates
Yes.
for those school districts?
So all of the other districts that you see there are K-12 districts, right? So Shorewood is K-12, Brown Deer K-12, South Milwaukee, I'm just kind of hitting every other one. Mequon
Yeah.
Thiensville is also K-12. So when you think about the way that schools operate, you're seeing funding for just a K-12 district in those columns, and in our columns you see the K-8 cost as well as then the cost of Nicolay because they have their own mill rate because they operate as their own separate district, right?
Okay. So why is it that our cost of education would be what seems to be dramatically higher in total K through 12 in
Mhm.
the Nicolay related districts than it is in any of these other school districts?
I think there's a couple things that would attribute to that when you're working with students at a younger level and you're working at the high school level, you have more opportunities across the K-12 to share staffing opportunities, to also just similarly to daycares, your older students don't necessarily need quite as many teachers in place for supervision, and those ratios can be a little bit higher, which lends to less staffing typically. Does that make sense?
So you're suggesting there might be some efficiencies if Nicolay School District were merged into the feeder system?
That's hard to say off the cuff, knowing that each of us carry our own financial history as well as looking at some of the costs of consolidation. But the fact that you've got two separate districts operating, and we look at the spending in those districts, we also know that as we're looking at that, I can't uniformly say that it would save us money, but there does seem when you're looking at those mill rate comparisons that you do see that in a K-12 district, there seems to be a little bit more efficiency there.
And would we
Yeah,
expect that those other school districts are likely to offer significantly less programming than our school district in light of their lower mill rate?
That is sort of district to district. I know Shorewood offers fairly robust programming. I believe Whitefish Bay offers fairly robust programming. Some of the other districts do not offer the same level of programming that we do at the middle school levels in our partner districts. So all of us offer band, orchestra, and choir in addition to general music. We all offer some sort of realm of like tech or engineering coursework that we do for students, library services for our elementary students, um, music, uh, PE, and art are also on a regular rotation within our elementary schools on a more frequent basis than some of the other districts. But I can't speak directly to that as I don't know their full scale of programming, but I know some districts do not offer as robust of programming as we do.
Okay, thank you.
I would, yeah, this is Michelle Brown. If I could add to that as
Yeah.
well. Another thing that comes into play with the mill rate is are the property values. So a district that may have higher property values have they can spread that tax levy amongst those. That can bring that mill rate down, looking lower. Another thing too is that the revenue limits, if you're receiving state equalization aid, that would decrease the amount of your levy and your levy rate potentially. So the Glendale-River Hills School District, along with Fox Point Bayside, Mapledale, Indian Hill, and Nicolay, are very high property value areas and receive little state equalization aid. Last year, we received approximately 112,000 of equalization aid, and this year we've received about 1.8 million. So that comes into play, and that's another reason our property taxes were down this year as well.
Brad, did you have any follow-up based on that additional information from Michelle?
Yeah, maybe just another clarifying point. I apologize for dominating so much of the time.
That's okay.
So
We've got time.
maybe it was, is there a better assessment of our cost for education per student, more so than mill rate, based on what you're saying? And I, again, don't have that data, but would that show a more equal approach?
So if you do look at this per pupil spending here on this page, you can see some of those comparisons just with our partner districts. I think one of the things to take into note is, when you start breaking that down based on whether it's staffing, facilities, these are sort of the overall costs, and you can see that out of the three feeder schools that are going in, the cost per pupil spending is slightly lower than Mapledale, Indian Hill, or Fox Point Bayside.
And could we assume that those are typical for the other school districts that were referenced?
Michelle, do you want to pop into that? I know it can really vary by school district.
Yeah, I do not have that data in front of me. It does vary, though. It could vary quite a bit. Yeah.
Thank you.
And we can get that, though, and we could put that out.
Yep. We would be happy to pull some of that information and put that out, and maybe accompany that with that mill rate slide so that you could see a more true cost.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your questions, Brad. Appreciate it. Does anyone else have any other questions? Roland?
Hi. Yeah, just a quick question on what happens after, is it 4 years or 5 years from now? Will we be looking then to renew the referendum, or what's the projection for that? And is there an option just to have the funds available from now well into the future, right?
Michelle, would you like me to pull up the slide that our Baird model slide?
Yes, please.
Okay, and I'll let you speak to that.
Yeah. This is only showing, like you said, the 4 years. That's what the current question will be on the ballot. After that time, we're looking at, you can see the 2030, 2031 year, another deficit of $6 million. We would need to address that. And the plan is, as we go, possibly downsizing a bit or consolidating our facilities and looking for other savings as we go.
And I think to add to that as well is really making sure that as we, have some unknowns in our future, including the state biennium budget and funding, we always want to make sure that I think the board, when they were looking at this resolution, looking at 4 years, provides us with a clear picture for the next 4 years, but then we don't under or over ask in terms of what we're looking at for our constituents. I know that one of the things that's come up with when we presented to the Common Council was just the weariness of community members in terms of having to vote, and we understand that, but then also really wanting to ensure that the planning that we do is based on current need to look at what is going on within the district and making sure that ask is replicating that need.
Thank you.
Mhm. Any other questions that people might have regarding sort of the ask or any of the components around, just in general school funding or specifically tax impact? All right. Well, I would encourage all of you to, if you have questions that pop up after the session, feel free to reach out to myself or Michelle Brown, and we're happy to provide you with any responses and to those questions. We appreciate you taking time out to learn more and to really consider and be educated around what is being asked and why it's being asked for so that you have clear information before you cast a vote on the 7th. So thank you all. I appreciate your time tonight and wish all of you well. Stay warm.